Well, welcome back, everybody. I've been quiet for a week. I know you've probably missed me. Went up to Liverpool for the Grand National. Went a few days out in Liverpool. What a fantastic city. I take it all back, everything I've said about Scousers. Though, on Saturday night, whilst outside a restaurant having a fag, a bloke got driven into by a Deliveroo driver on his bike on the pavement, and they had an altercation, at which point a third drunk bloke sprung up from the floor and went, hey, calm down. Made my day. So nice to see Scousers in the natural environment. Anyway, back to today's topics in hand, namely Mr. Two-Tier Kiers, our glorious leader, the communist dictator of Britain, has announced that he will single-handedly save the car industry yet again for the fifth time. Because that nasty Mr. Trump with all his tariffs, we'll skirt over that. That's a whole nother issue that is just dividing the world again, which is probably the plan anyway, divide and conquer. But nevertheless, Kiers has come out and said, don't worry about cars, I'm going to sort cars out, here's how I'm going to do it. So I've just read his press statement, and he don't really say a lot, to be honest. But what he does say is very, very predictable. Regards to the zero emissions vehicle mandate, you know, the thing where Britain was going to have to sell 20% of cars last year. They didn't. Nobody got fined. They just changed the rules. This year it's meant to be 24% or 28%, depending on which version you look at. And the fines are meant to be 15 grand per car for everything under that percentage. That ain't gonna happen either. However, he kept in the ban on petrol and diesel cars after 2030. More on that in a minute. However, with regard to milk floats, that 28% was solely milk floats. Change that, change the rules. Hybrids are allowed now till 2035. Either type of hybrid. So it could be Toyota Prius is going to count now, which is essentially a petrol car with a sewing machine engine in it. But that'll count. That'll count towards the target. So it'll make it look like everyone's buying electric. They're not, but that doesn't matter. It'll make it look like it is. And therefore, more people will buy them. That's his philosophy. Motor manufacturers can now swap between vans and cars. So if they sell a lot of cars, but none of the shit vans that they make, and let's face it, all electric vans are shit, I've covered it several times. If they do that, they can use their car allowance to top up their van allowance, so they wanted to pay fines that way. So basically, take the goalposts and move them wherever on the pitch the ball is, until the ball goes in the goal, and then go, you see, that's a legitimate goal. And then put the goalpost back where it was, and then repeat until 2035. So basically, it's a completely, utterly pointless piece of legislation. However, it's not as simple as that. Because now they've said, if you don't make it one year, you can roll over to the next year. And then make it up that year. If you do too much one year, you can roll over your surplus to the next year. Who's keeping track of that? I'll tell you, no one. Because this is just the most pointless piece of legislation known to man now. It's the zero emission vehicle mandate that once existed for a purpose and no longer serves any purpose other than whatever they decide it to on the day they decide to use it. The goalposts are gone now. There are no goalposts left. It's just a pitch and people kicking balls everywhere and claiming they've scored a goal. Utterly, utterly, utterly pointless. But there's one other nugget that came out of this. He's going to allow certain manufacturers to carry on making petrol cars because they can't reach the threshold of electric cars because they just don't make them. But that's fine. Well, how is it? Because the planet's dying, isn't it? Oh no, these are small manufacturers, so the numbers are quite small, so it doesn't matter. They all have one thing in common though. I wonder what that one thing is. I'll give you a clue. They're not Dacia Sanderos. Because the UK manufacturers that I've worked out will be exempt from the zero emission vehicle mandate and having to produce electric cars are, in no particular order, Aston Martin, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Lotus, Morgan. Now what do they all have in common, I wonder? That's right, they're all driven by rich posh people. Because we're all in this together, except for the rich, who aren't in it at all. So if you're loaded and you couldn't give a shit about the climate, well, I'm poor and I couldn't give a shit about the climate, so we'd have that in common. But if you're loaded, you can still go and buy a brand new. Get your DB12 on order now. It'll be a 2-year waiting list, but that's all right because that's not going to be affected at all. You want your Rolls-Royce Corniche? No problem, you can have one of them. You can have one of those awful Bentegas that I took a photo of yesterday. You can have your wardrobe, your MFI wardrobe with a petrol engine in it. No problem. Because the posh and the rich are not going to be affected by this. The only people affected by this are the people that would have bought petrols and diesels up till 2030. They're the only people affected. The people that wanted to buy a Vauxhall Corsa 1.2 petrol, you've now got to buy the hateful Vauxhall Corsa E. You want to buy a Aston Martin Volante, you crack on. If you got £2.5 million to spend on the Vanquish RS thing that Gordon Ramsay just bought, or whatever it's called, Valkyrie, no problem. You're not responsible for the planet. The plebs, they're responsible for the planet and they need to know their place. And Starmer has just said in no uncertain terms, rich people, crack on. Poor people, die. I've been saying it for years. He's just put it in black and white. The only car manufacturers that will be allowed to carry on making petrol cars are those that make it for the rich and famous. That's not a coincidence. I know they're all small manufacturers. That's because no small manufacturer can produce a budget car for obvious reasons. Costs, overheads. Simple. But if you want a bespoke coach-built Aston Martin with all the extras on it and the wood, you know, the walnut and the carbon fibre and all the rest of it, doesn't matter, does it? Because money's no object. And that's the crucial thing here. He's looked after his mates, he's looked after the rich people, and he said, fuck you to the poor people. And I really hope everybody can see that for what it is, because that is exactly what it is. Nothing else. It was never about the planet. It was never about carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, or any other carbon. It was always about making the poor people stay at home and know their place and let the rich people do what they want. For the same reason that they bring in carbon tax on planes but not on private jets. Know your place. Future my arse.